Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the stream. This is Dragon Skies, and today we are going to be doing a little bit of game design. The last time we left off, we had a lot of good stuff done. We took care of working on a little bit of construction here with our fences and our paths leading down to the street. And now we're going to take a look at more of a gameplay side and revisit some of the stuff that we've already made, including combat. So stick around if you enjoy this kind of content or just want to stay connected to the project as a whole. Please consider subscribing, leaving a like, supporting the channel, and yeah, hope you guys have as much fun as I'm about to. So, just looking at all of this, in the last few days we've done some cutscene work, which is rough around the edges, but it's working well. We've worked on the inside of our manor space, which is a huge deal here. And we've added some cobwebs to the walls, which is more stylistic than anything else. But one thing that has been left pretty much in shambles this whole time has been the encounters. So it works at a bare minimum for the offense, and the ending looks really good. But we have a problem that if we go through a fight, right, and we just like kind of let it play itself through, then we end up with a couple of strange issues. So let me just adjust some stuff over here with our moose friend here. We're going to go ahead and take a look over at his encounter data and edit this moose here, give it some more health. I want to make sure that we can test this correctly. So, the unit data is empty. That's probably not good. The reference stats are here. So we're going to want to edit his stats. We're going to give him Remax health. This will be enough to kind of show off a little bit of what the problem is here that we're going to be fixing. So looking into our scenes, we're going to jump into actually the manor. My bad on that one. And honestly, we're just going to move the player over by the moose to make testing this a lot quicker. Now, if I start, ideally the game should just start me off directly in that position since I haven't come from another doorway, which it does. And we're just going to trigger the encounter. And just as expected, the moose gives us a 3 out of 3 health, just like we adjusted. So I'm just going to do a quick critical hit. So the first problem that we encounter is that we don't see a block symbol, which is bad. Because ideally we want to show symbols for the gameplay. Like if you can block, you want to see like a Q button. If you can do a critical strike, you want to see a E button, right? Or whatever the keys are, which we might end up fixing our keybinds later too. But another thing is with our items, the inventory is a little gimmicky. We might end up fixing that during our next stream. But yeah. So this is what we're working with. So we're going to go ahead and jump into our scenes here. And we're going to look at World Zero Combat. Because this is where all the fighting happens. And if I open up the scene here, we have a default scenario set up for testing specifically. And it's just a couple of moose enemies. I'm not going to be able to actually win this fight. Thankfully, that's not what we're trying to do, really. We're just trying to test some stuff out. But if I punch the first guy, again, the issue arises. I can't see what I'm supposed to block. So what I'm going to try and do is I'm going to set up our input icon library to actually work correctly. So ideally, the input icon library is a singleton. And it has an offense and a defense button. It could set its position, and it could set, ideally, the animation. So I don't know exactly how we're going to do that, but let's try it. Let's try all this. So just jumping over into here. Let's take a look over at some of our scripts within the enemy attacks and the player attacks and make them so that they use the input icon library to turn on these buttons, these instant responses. So this is going to be inside of our combat scripts. So there's attack manager, Store player text, store enemy text, all of that stuff. But I feel like what's actually going to be using our buttons is the player attack and everything that it inherits from. Well, everything that inherits from it, I should say. So, and the real-time in action input. All right, so within this, we have a read input, which is probably where we're going to want to put this. So we want to find the specific attacks. I'm looking for those right now. I'm going to hop into Unity and like find it from there. And it's going to be inside of the prefabs, specifically the moose. And the enemy is going to have a specific attack. Input reader. And we're going to use input or input icon library dot current dot, and we're going to say defense button dot set active true. And we're just going to set that button to be generally in the same place, like somewhere near the player. And in the same way, when the reader is disabled, we're going to want to kind of like turn it off. I'm going to create a public abstract void on reader disabled. And of course this is going to get mad because it doesn't have a function to work with that. So we're going to go ahead and hop into here, and we're going to create a public override void on reader disabled. And we're going to say input icon library dot current dot defense button dot set active false. So in other words, we're just turning off the button when we don't need it. All right, and this is the defense button, I believe. So we're going to name these better. And this will be our offense button. Save it all. And our defense button should be like somewhat near the player. So let's see if this works. Now we're getting some compiler errors, so actually we can't do anything until we fix this. Public override on reader disabled. We don't really need anything for when the player's reader is disabled. And over here, we're going to get rid of this. Actually, we want to keep that. We're going to turn on the attack button. And then we're going to turn off the attack button once this attack is finished. This is fairly simple programming. I'm just trying to basically determine when the best point is to have these set up, but so we give Unity a second to work through its stuff, and now we're going to test. All right, now we're just going to test this out. So we can attack, it works. And of course the game's going to freak out because we were at 0 health the whole time, that's fine. I blocked. We have an obvious issue. The icon does not disappear. That's a problem. So we're going to need to find a way to turn the Q button off. I'm not exactly sure what's up with that. So I'm gonna go up. This has a problem and this has a problem. We can't really do anything about either of those. So we're gonna go to the moose input reader, and why is it saying on reader disabled never happens? Let's check the moose's animations and make sure that it actually marks the attack as over. So we're going to set this to basically disable the reader. Okay, so that should be all that it takes. Because the animator is kind of the thing in control of that, determining what the attack looks like if it succeeds or fails. So we're going to do this, attack, and it should charge in, and I get to block. But we have the obvious problem that it's still not showing us the Q button disappearing. So why? Let's hop into here. We're going to go to the input icon library, see if we're having a problem there. So that, by all means, should have disabled everything. Oh, man. Game designing when you're stressed is something else, man. I mean, like, half of my mind is here, half of my mind is on real life, and it's kind of like a weird dilemma, I guess. So we're going to punch that guy and block here. Bloink. Block. Punch. Okay. So it works, but the button is still showing. I don't exactly know what's up with that, because that's a little bit annoying. So we're going to hop into here and double check a lot of stuff. So the first thing is checking all the animations. So unit faint, wow hurt, slight hurt, idle, charge resolution. So it says it's disabling the input reader. So I don't even need to have this here, but like, it's not turning it off like it's supposed to. So taking a look at the moose input reader, do we save this? I'm going to try saving it one more time, see if that fixes anything. If it compiles here, didn't compile there, that means that it knows what it's doing. I'm a little confused, guys. This is not making sense to me. Well, let's just try a couple of different things then. So I'm going to block. What happens if I don't block? Just straight up not turning off. Here it is. Okay, there. That should fix it. We actually forgot to call the actual function on reader disabled. Okay, we're going to try this one more time. I think that would fix it. Full screen. And again, the end result should be that the block it disappears after the attack, which is exactly what happens there. So if I punch, it will hide it afterwards. All right. Then we block there. That works. I can punch here. That block there. Punch here. That's all taken care of. So our icons are working again. That's good. Let's keep on going with that momentum. So what else do we need to do? One thing that's weird. The spawn one needs to be considered the attack point because that's where all the animations will assume to be from. So when it comes to these attacks, we want to make sure that these bros, when they're attacking the player, move forward enough to strike. So let's see here. Which manager is in charge of the attacks? The attack manager. We're going to hop into here. And if we start an enemy attack, it triggers the start coroutine down here. And we're just going to take a second to comment this out. If the back row of the player's team is empty, attack the front. That makes sense. Preferred row of... If the preferred row of attack dictates the front row otherwise, attack the front row. Otherwise, hit the back. Okay, that makes sense. And then this part, we're focusing on the unit that's being attacked. And then we trigger a random attack from one of the enemies. Everything is finished. All right, cool. So we now understand what's going on here. It seems like this script isn't actually responsible for triggering the attack itself. It's supposed to make room for the enemy, the script to do that for it. What specifically we're calling here is the enemy brain dot attacks. So enemy brain is the one responsible here. But more specifically, we're looking at attacks, whatever that type is. So we're going to go into attacks. That's the player attack. So it has the trigger attack abstract void. So basically, these attacks themselves are being called in a modular way. So what we're trying to do here is make it so that we move the enemy into position before triggering these set attacks. So let's just take a look around and try and understand the scripts a little bit more before we make big changes. One thing I want to do is make sure that we know how the enemies are being put in position. Oh, hey, welcome in, MHLFR. How's it going? We're just working on a little bit of stuff as far as combat goes. This is a system that I started a long time ago, so it's going a little rough around the edges, but good to have you on as always. Good, glad to hear it. In real life, I'm very worn out and tired, so I'm thankful for streaming. Keeps me disciplined, accountable when it comes to game dev stuff. You know, um, I'm a little confused about a lot of things that are going on behind the scenes, to be honest, though, with the game. I've been working on this for like a year, and coming back to some of these older scripts is like very difficult. I mean, it all works, but it's hard to understand why it works, I guess. So, within the context of this stream here, we're trying to basically fix up the combat system to make it very functional and also have a lot more game feel going for it. So, we have the icons showing up as a bare minimum. We have the enemies attacking. We could customize those if we want to. There's something weird that's going on otherwise, though. Um, the enemies will attack as normal, but only the enemy in the front row actually has a good distance set for his animations. I just opened my laptop up for the first time today. It is taking so long to load Unity. Lol. Why do I need I need less of a potato so much, right? Dude. When I first started Unity game design, I was running a 2015 MacBook, which firstly it's a MacBook, which means it's already subpar. No offense, Mac. It's really great for creative stuff, but like also computer science stuff, it could be really slow and annoying. And also, right now it's 11 years old, so I get the feeling. It's it's hard, but like also I think that there's something to be said for that kind of stuff to be helpful in a way, because when you learn how to work with less resources, less quality of speed or whatever, it makes it so you're a better game designer overall because you know how to cut corners to make things run better. You know how to keep stuff within a good scope. Be encouraged. It's a potato, sure, but like maybe the potato is going to teach you some cool things about game design. I know it taught me a lot. So I think like this is working pretty fine, but I want to kind of like anchor my enemies to a specific position. Specifically, we want the enemies to lerp to wherever they're supposed to be and then do their animations from there so that way we can move the people forward in order to attack enemies in the back. Ouch. So yeah, we're going to try that. So inside of each enemy script, I'm going to require a position anchor, which forces them to stay within one of these three dots, the basic enemy positions. And then we can move them forward from there in order to get closer to the enemy. My small horror project is pretty much done. I just need to get my voice actors' lines and put them in the game. Dude, congratulations. Honestly, it feels really good to finish a project. It's cool to hear that you're getting so close. Wish I could stay the same, but this project definitely has a scope beyond what I'd be used to. But yeah, congratulations, GG's. Um, focus, Dragons, guys. You got this. I know you're tired. Just focus on the dots. So, first thing that I'm going to want to do is I'm going to open up my prefabs. I need to make sure that I'm inside of my enemy script so I can give it that functionality that it needs. So, we're going to put this in the parent, and that's actually going to be where we anchor our positions from. So, we're going to call this unit anchor. But let's be more specific. We're going to call this a unit position anchor. Now, this script isn't really going to control animations rather it's going to control the base position. So we're going to put this inside of the combat scripts and just save it there. I could do more cleaning up if it gets too messy. Saving failed. Oh, that's weird. Now, with this position anchor, the goal is that it's going to anchor the unit to its base position, but then allow us to like kind of stretch that out if we want it to get closer to the player to attack, for example, or if we want something similar. So we're going to go ahead and delete everything in here, get rid of start and update. No one needs it. Like literally, it just exists there for the first few tutorials you do, and afterwards it's gone. And what do we want for this guy? We want a hidden inspector. Public game object base position, because we have these dots, these game objects inside of the scene that are going to kind of guide the enemy to where they're supposed to be. Lol, why is that so real though? Might I ask what in specifically you're referencing? Because I am down on brain cells today. Oh man, dude. So once we have this position, we're actually going to do stuff in update. Transform dot position. The start the update thing. Oh, no kidding, dude. Honestly, once I got to a point where I actually know what that stuff does, I use awake more than I use start. I hardly use update. And it's just kind of funny. I like it. It's become kind of a meme. So we're going to set the position to be equal to the base position dot transform dot position. It's so real though. It's kind of cool though, because like even being able to say that kind of shows how much you've grown as a developer, you know? Just like knowing the difference between stuff that you know and like stuff that you take for granted. Knowing when you could get rid of the stuff that you thought was default. I mean, it's just a cool feeling, I guess. And now we're going to hop out of the update, and all that this really does is it will move our enemy to a specific object. Now, of course, I want to set some customization stuff. Serialized field. Private. Vector 2. Offset. So basically this offset is going to allow us to adjust where the enemy is standing with it while it's still being technically anchored to the base position. So, and now we're just going to create some functions to make it so we could adjust this stuff. So we're going to create a public void and 0 offset. And all that this is going to do is set offset to vector 2.0. In other words, it's just going to snap the enemy unit back into its original position. And then we're going to have a public void set offset. And that's going to do exactly what you would think. It's going to set the offset to a vector 2 that we give inside of the function. So kind of a little bit of a rant. When I was setting up the stream today, I like was kind of bugged by the chat not working and like the now playing being weird. So I was like kind of grinding to get it all going. And for some reason, I couldn't find a single chat widget that works. And like I could see everything that people are saying, and so can you guys. So it's not a huge deal. But like, I don't know. I would give so much to just have an overlay that I could just totally take for granted. And just be like, oh yeah, it's working. Like, you know? But man, it's a lot to work with. I'm glad that we got the now playing working, because it actually looked really snazzy. I like it. But like, the chat is being fairly annoying. Oh, I almost forgot something. So now we're actually going to also add our offset to this thing here. We're going to add the offset to the position that the enemy is going to. And it's throwing us an error for some reason. I guess it wants a vector 3. It's so weird that Unity 2D keeps on wanting me to use vector 3s instead of vector 2s, because like I'm not working in 3D space. I'm simply not. It's just weird, dude. I mean, I want to get into 3D stuff more often. Like I'm even getting into Blender and 3D modeling stuff just to get into 3D game design. Thinking about making a joke game for me and some friends to play together. But like the fact that I'm having to use vector 3 in 2D mathematics, it just confuses me a little bit. So, final thing. I don't want the transform dot position to immediately snap to where it's supposed to be. I want it to look smooth. So we're going to use mathf.lerp. And if you've never used this, spare yourself some pain and do it, please. What this basically does is it kind of like... Let me see. Actually, we're going to do vector2.lerp. What this does is it smooths transitions between 2 points using math instead of animation. So you can do it in script. I love lerping so... Dude! Yes! I use it. It's such a good way to lazily animate stuff. Oh my gosh. I should not be saying that during stream as I'm trying to be professional. I love autocorrect too. Yeah. Oh, for real. Especially when I'm like doing school stuff. Like, oh my gosh, it saved me so often from some very embarrassing situations. But the first position that I'm going to want is the starting position. So that's just transform.position. And then the second one is going to be the new position. And then the third one is going to be our transition speed. So I'm going to create a serialized field. Private float transition speed. Now this transition speed, I think we're just going to start by setting it to something like 0.25f. Something pretty small. If I don't like that, we can change it later. And we're going to set... Actually, I just realized I capitalized transition speed, and that's kind of making me annoyed because only functions are capitalized. Yeah, my style is very... I kind of noticed that the game developers tend to have like a style of programming, and mine, it's really nitpicky, but like I like to stick to it, you know? I don't know. So, what else do we need to do? I feel like this is all set, but we need to do one final thing in order to make it all work. And that's using our unit tracker to actually set these things. So this unit tracker is a way for everything to kind of reference our units down here. So like everything can talk to the unit tracker and get a reference to the enemy in the spawn 1 spot, right? It's a singleton. It's like it knows everything. But I also want it to like also set the initial positions as long as it's already getting all those references. So in the assign to enemies, we're actually wanting to use, instead of a unit data enemy, we want to get a reference to this new script that we made. So first things first, we're going into our prefabs and making sure that the moose actually has it. Unit position anchor. Yep, it has it. So, and now we're just going to add a line or two. Is equal to enemy dot transform. Alright, this is getting a little bit messy, but as long as I follow the same conventions, I think it'll be fine. I don't know. Should I carry on with that? Because this seems like a little bit of a messy reference. I'm just going to go with it for now. We can make it nice later. So, get component. And it's going to get the component unit position anchor. All right. So all that's going to do is it's going to give the position manager a reference to that. And it's going to set the position to the thing. And I also wanted to set the anchor position there. and the anchor dot, and what's the variable called here? Base position is equal to that. We're going to set it to the transform of this guy. All right. That's all that we need. Now, if I go into here, I'm going to start the project from our combat scene and see what that does. If it throws immediately errors, that would be subpar. But it looks like it didn't. So let's actually see what we can do here. If I hop into here and set the offset, we can now change the offset, which is huge, but our transition speed is also obnoxiously fast. So I'm going to set this to 0.01. And that feels better, but still too slow. So we're going to set it to 0.03. All right, I'm going to try this now. .03 is our transition speed, and then we can set the offset if we ever need a second row or third row unit to attack the first row or whatever. I don't know who's going to be responsible for that math, but we at least need to have that control. So the vision is that this moose in the back, it needs to be able to line up with the player when it does its attack. So all we're going to have it do is go here, do its attack, and then zero out when it's done. All right. So I have an idea. I have a good idea. Hold on. Okay, hold on. What if every single unit on the start had a certain offset saved that it could reference to kind of be like, oh yeah, this is how far I need to go in order to hit the player correctly? Why don't we try that? Okay, so inside of the unit tracker, let's say anchor dot attack distance, or maybe attack adjustment, is equal to I times 2.5f. Now, of course, we actually have to create that variable, but I really like this. I feel like this is good. Private float attack adjustment. And that's all we need. All right. So I think that this is good. Although we need something to set that offset. Vector 2, we're actually not going to care about giving anything else here. And the idea is that once we get to this point, we're going to set offset, and we're going to use a new vector 2. And this vector 2 is going to be the attack adjustment, or I should say the negative attack adjustment, because we're going to the left, and 0. We don't really want to change anything from there. And then we could, of course, just 0 it afterwards. So what I'm thinking now is that we should make the enemy attack virtual, so that way we can have some base stuff that just we can take for granted, I guess. Or even better, we just set up 2 separate things here. So let's go into player attack. I think that ironically, the moose attack inherits from the player attack. So that'll be a lot. I'm going to hop into the moose thing here, and we're going to look at the attack that it has, and we actually need to access that in order to make those changes to its position. So it's going to be moose charge, and yeah, ironically, it inherits from player attack. We're going to have to rename that, but the attack is triggered, it sets the trigger here, charge, and then when it resolves, it does that. So I'm gonna hop into player tech, go to the definition. And gaming with portals. Hey man, it's been a minute. How's it going? Dude, good to see you. I'm doing pretty well. Just living the dream, designing games and doing all that good jazz. Right now we're working on a project called The Game's Afoot. It's a RPG game that kind of takes a little bit of influence from like Paper Mario and stuff. So, yeah. Are you using Windows now? Guilty as charged. I got a new PC, so I'm no longer a Mac user. I was actually just telling everyone about my old potato. 2015 MacBook. I'm done. I'm done for now. Oh, that's thank you. But yeah, right now we're trying to figure out some stuff for our enemy attacks to make them kind of like look right, I guess, because we have a lot of problems with our attacks combat system right now that we need to fix. So yeah. Uh, oh gosh, we need to change some stuff here. So should be public. So where was my train of thought? We're going to focus back up, guys. Whenever the attack starts, we need to have a reference down to our... I have an idea. What if we just have a script in the base of our player attack here called setup or transition enemy position or something, or adjust enemy position, and then public void reset enemy position. And these things could just be in the background, but we could reference them if we need it. So we, of course, don't really want to have these semicolons. I'm not working with abstraction here. And if you guys don't know what an abstraction is, I want to tell you about it in another video sometime. It is so cool and helpful for stuff. I learned about it in my computer science class and applied it to game design here. And Minecraft. Dude, Minecraft is low-key the best game design music of all time. Like, okay, maybe not the best game design music, but like, it is so good. The soundtrack is just so relaxing, so cool. You just can't go wrong with it. Especially old Minecraft. No hate on Lane of Rain or anything, but like, I don't know. I was a kid back when Minecraft was a hip new thing. That makes me sound like a boomer. Oh my gosh, what is this? All my homies love object-oriented programming. So do I, dude. Oh my gosh, it is so cool. It made when I did state machines for my game, solid state machines with object-oriented programming, it made everything 10 million times easier. I kid you not. Now I run almost all of my stuff off of object-oriented. And Unity has a cool feature for that too. They have configurable assets that you can use called scriptable objects that make object-oriented stuff 10 million times easier because you could have assets that exist outside of every scene that you could just drag and drop into a script. And there's that separation, but like also you don't have to worry about getting all those connections or anything. It's kind of cool. But focusing up again. So the player attack script, does it have what does it have a reference to? Lena Rain is so great at music low-key. No kidding. She's really good. I really like her. Especially Pigstep. I know that's really basic, but Pigstep is a banger. Oh yeah, it's like Godot. You know, everyone keeps on... When Godot... Unity made some mistakes in the past, and everyone kind of migrated to Godot. And I thought about doing the same thing for a long time. And even though I didn't do it, I'm still really curious. I kind of want to try that out at some point, you know? So let's just get a reference to the position anchor here. And we're just going to say, we're going to call this script to adjust its position if this script is called. And I'm trying to find it. Let's look inside of the anchor. What name do we use? Public void set attack offset. Okay. Anchor.0 offset. Okay, so that's all ready. Cool. So all that we have to do from here is... Actually, do we even need to do anything? I think the only thing we need to do is to go into the moose charge, and whenever we trigger the attack, we call the base script here within player attack, which is adjust enemy position. And we could just do that since it's already set up. And when we mark attack complete, we could do the opposite. 0 offset, which is reset enemy position. A lot of people still use Unity. I think the thing people liked about Godot is how much simpler GD script is than C#, but in the current day, if you have a good computer, it doesn't entirely matter. I agree. I think that a lot of Godot's appeal is in its simplicity. A lot of people like that about it. It's not, especially with the programming language, for sure. And the only reason why I didn't really care is because I like C#. I got addicted to the syntax very quickly. And also I really don't care about money, so if Unity does dumb things, I don't really care, I guess. So that it's just like, there's a lot to the schism. But maybe for one of my videos, I should try making a small game in Godot. That would be really fun, actually. Like, join a game jam, and then, like, make a platformer in Godot, just, like, off the bat. No experience, see how it goes. That could be really peak. And I'm realizing one thing that we need to do to actually get this adjustment to work is hop into our prefabs. Godot does have a C# implementation, but it can be kind of rough when you're working with plugins. Yeah, that's the hard part about computer science. Whenever there's not native support for something, or whenever there's like an implementation beyond the base, it can be pretty rough around the edges. For sure. And especially since Godot is open source, I don't know, again, I can't speak as a professional here. I'm a Unity user, but like I would imagine since it's open source, it doesn't have like exactly professional backing, because it's more just people who use Godot that are like supporting Godot. So I would imagine that would have a little bit of a impact on it, how it's updated to support these things. I don't know. Again, I just need to try Godot at this point. That I really shouldn't be speaking as if I know this stuff, yeah. But hopping into prefabs, we need to get onto our moose and set all of these things. We're going to hop into enemy, and we're looking to get a reference to our anchor right here. And the anchor, of course, is going to be on the top. I really like open source, though. It's annoying when I have a bunch of programs that want to get my sign-on information, that want me to become a part of their tribe, that want me to... And that's part of why I was okay going to Windows from Apple. Because I like having stuff that I could have across my Windows and Apple devices. I like stuff that's simplified there. Okay, yeah, you guys see that? I think that worked. We're going to punch this guy, and the guy up front is going to move forward a little bit, but that looks a little unnatural with the... Yeah, you see that? That looks cursed. That looks so cursed. Yeah, I'm not sure, because the lerping works for moving the moose into position. It might help to apply a cubic interpolation. Dang it, this is the first time in my streaming career that a chat member has said something to confuse me instead of vice versa. Okay, cubic interpolation. If your alpha value goes above 1, your float will overshoot as well. Well, hold on. So cubic interpolation. Let's start with that. Let's pull up some Google searches. Please don't dox me, Google. I don't want to deal with this. Cubic interpolation Unity. Let's see. Let's see. Let's see. Let's see. Let's see. You know what? Maybe I'll just ask you what you're talking about. Is this like kind of like a lerp thing, or something similar to a lerp thing, where it's like kind of mathematic, or the alpha value thing is actually your problem, but the cubic interpolation just looks nice. Well, the alpha value. Are you talking about the third value in the lerping, the kind of the speed of the transition? And also, thanks for helping me troubleshoot this. This is like probably the weirdest problem that I've had working on this project so far. I don't know, because like it technically works? Question mark? Not really. I think so. Okay. Would this be the best time to look up a tutorial? Is the question. I don't know. Especially on stream. I don't know. Um, let's just do it really quick. Cubic interpolation, unity support. If Lerp is the same in Unity as Unreal, it should be. Well, there's a lot of different things across, like especially with names. I don't know. So splines alpha needs to be restricted between 0 and 1. Well, here's the thing though. The alpha is never changing for our current lerping system. If you look at the moose enemy itself, we have a constant that's actually determining how quickly this transition happens, and it's set to 0.03. It's never changing from that. So, and it never does need to. I of course could like set it to 1. I could set it to 0. I could set it to anything in between that. But it's like nothing in the script is actually adjusting the lerping speed or the alpha, I guess I should say. I'm learning I'm learning something new every day, chat. Technical stuff. The problem isn't that it's having any technical issue with it. I just think it looks bad. Yeah, you could totally see the code. So the position anchor here has a attack adjustment on the top, which you could ignore that for the time being. That's not really relevant to functionality. And it has a game object which serves as the base position. And basically what that does is it kind of sets a object that the enemy is supposed to kind of hold to position-wise. Of course, there's an offset, so you could get a little ways away from that object if it needs to, and that's important because we want it to line up with the player when it attacks. And then we have a transition speed, which is the alpha you're talking about here. And all that we're doing here is we're transitioning between the position of the enemy in a given instant, right? Lerping it towards the base position with the offset. And then we're using the transition speed or the alpha to guide how fast that goes. These functions are quality of life, so I could actually quickly change the offsets. Yeah, not much we could say about that other than that. I should probably comment this up now that I think about it to kind of make sure that this stays like, what's the word? Dang, I'm pulling a blank. Any ideas are welcome, because I think what the problem is that while the lerping is happening and while the player, or I should say the enemies, are pulling their attacks, it's like the lerping and the animation itself are conflicting with one another. I think I have an idea. What if we took a look at something within the attack itself and made it so that we reset the enemy position, where we adjust the enemy position, and then wait for 1 second. We're going to try it. Private I enumerator. And we're going to call it, what are we going to call it? Wait for position adjustment. And of course, we're going to want to make this into the actual script here. All right, gaming with portals. What magic do you got for me? Mostly joking. No pressure or anything. I don't really know what to do with this, but the alpha property of the vector2.lerp is a percentage between the 2 points. Correct. Yeah, that's what that is. And that's why we're using it to kind of smooth the animation of the moose coming closer to the player to line up the attack. Which means that transition speed should be changing from 0 to 1 across the duration of the move. Well, let me try and visualize this. There's a reason why I'm not doing that. Because, just pulling up Ace Bright really quick. So sometimes I like to visualize it like this. You're correct in saying that the alpha value is the... Come on, give me the line tool. I want the line tool. You're correct in saying that the alpha value is the kind of the percentage. If we were to calculate this, if we wanted it to go here after the lerp is actually finished, this would be the A that we want. Like, we could say this is, you know what, screw that, we're using the text. We're going to say, like, A is equal to 0.5, right? And maybe I set this to be black. But the only reason why I don't do it like that is because what I'm using it as the base of our comparison isn't a set point like this. I'm not always referencing the start. I'm referencing the relative position of the moose as it's coming closer to this point. So, how do I visualize this? Does that kind of make sense? Because, like, let's say that the moose starts at the very beginning, and our percentage is 0.5, right? We go halfway there. Then the moose's new position becomes this. Now, what's 0.5 of the moose's new position and the target position? Well, 0.5 is this. Well, 0.5 of that is here. So I don't need to be... But here's the problem, I think. That the problem isn't that this isn't working. In fact, this is working fine. The problem is that this is not the only movement that the moose is doing at a given point. At the same time, the animator is trying to pull it in a different direction than we're trying to make it go. Like, over here, and over here. So what I believe you're doing is implementing a lerp in an interesting way, actually. Yeah. I use lerps to help with animations a lot. It kind of... So not a lerp, sorry. Or not a lerp, sorry, a cubic interpolation. Oh, so this is the same thing? That's interesting. That's interesting. Okay. I'll have to... I'm looking out. Thanks for telling me about this. I really want... I'm going to look it up. I think that there's a lot to gain in learning more about, especially mathematical code functions. But if the problem is that the animator is kind of overriding what we're trying to do with the lerp, what we could do is we could do a time separation between the two things. So we don't actually start the animation until after the lerping is finished, until the moose is in a good position to attack. And I think that's the move for now. It's going to take a second longer to actually finish, which is unfortunate, but I think it's kind of necessary. And worst case scenario, we just make it really quick. What a cubic interpolation does is it makes it slow down as it reaches a target. Yeah, that's exactly what this is. Because, you know, it's kind of this idea of mathematics. Like, as we get closer between these two distances, we get closer and closer to a distance of 0, but we never quite reach it since we're constantly dividing by 2. So, that's exactly what this is. And it helps a lot with smoothing the transition over time without using any time functions. Because I'm lazy. I don't want to deal with that. Frankly. But what I'm thinking is we create a I enumerator that will return waits for seconds. And let's say 1. Does the Unity animator not have cubic keyframes? It does, but here's the reason why I'm not using the animator here. So when I open up my moose here, this is a generic type, right? I'm copying this moose multiple times over in order to create multiple enemies. And these enemies, they're in multiple different positions distance-wise from the player. So if I wanted to use the Unity animation system to bridge this gap between the player in a smooth way, a lot of problems would come from that. The first one being that, what if the moose is here, right? Well, I only have to bridge this distance. Okay, cool, but what if the moose is here? Well, now I have to create a second type of moose that has a different animation for that bridges a further distance using that interpolation. Okay, cool, well, I did two. Well, what if I need to do the third position here? And you see where this gets annoying, right? Like, why would I do that if I could just make it look nice through scripting and not have to redo every single attack animation? So what does the animation system do right now? Right now, the animation system is actually working hand in hand with our attack system. So yeah, we have an idle animation, which is just the moose standing in its given place, which, again, the base place could be any of these 1-3 positions. And just going back onto the moose, we also have a attack intro, which calls some scripts to basically give the player a chance to react with a button press. And then based on what happens there, it will resolve and then kind of like throw it back to the beginning. So it's taking care of the attack itself, assuming a set distance. So it's a perfect attack animation from this point to this point. However, it is not a perfect attack animation from this point to this point, because if we set the attack to start from this red point, the second one down, it will actually end it a little ways from the player, which will confuse people, because, like, why did I get hit by an attack that didn't even touch me, you know? So my choices are either I redo the animation system to have 3 variations of the moose based on where it starts, or I change its base position before the attack so the attack animation that's perfect for here can operate starting from here, if that makes sense. But yeah, I could also visualize it just through some gameplay. The animation system right now is... This first moose is a perfect example of what that looks like. It's attacking as if I'm right here. And it has perfect reaction buttons configured for that position. They make sense. If I'm right here, the defend button will show up right as I'm about to get hit. But if I'm right here, it kind of like has a little bit of an error, which can be annoying for players. So yeah, that's part of the reason why we're using scripting to lerp the enemy into a good attack position. So could you add a transform component to the base of the prefab and then use lerp to animate that? Ran out of chat space, hold on. Well, actually, that's exactly what we've done so far with the enemy. If you look at the base of the enemy, we have this unit position anchor, and that's responsible for moving the game object closer to the player so that the animations that are happening below are lined up perfectly. So that's actually exactly the fix. So for alpha, you would pass in a float that's the timer, and then A would be the moose start and B would be the end. I mean, not exactly. What I would do is I would like... Here's the ideal. I would set the moose's position, and then at the very start, it's going to lerp in, and I'm just going to use a timer to wait until it's at a really close position to being ready. And then after that timer runs out, it will start its attack. Let me just show you what that would look like. So I actually have the script going here. We're going to wait a few seconds if we have a adjusted position before we start our charge animation. All this is doing is giving the anchor time to set the position. So with the trigger attack, we're going to say adjust enemy position, which is just a way of saying, okay, get in a good position to start this animation. And then we're going to start coroutine, which coroutines are just time-constrained functions. Wait for position adjustment. And that will wait for like a given amount of seconds. We're just going to actually use a configurable float here. Private float timer. So the issue is that your animator and your lerp are fighting for the same variable. Yeah, they're both fighting over the transform.position. And it looks ugly. It looks like they're being like ripped across like multiple points of space. And I don't like that. It looks weird. The animation that I configured for the moose to attack was based on the assumption that the lerp wouldn't be affecting it. So it only makes sense if the lerp isn't affecting it. So therefore, I should make it so that they're not going at the same time. That's the idea behind using a wait for seconds script here. Yeah, but when you're making a turn-based game, which you might have experience with this, a lot of this is just making sure that certain things don't step on each other's toes, you know? So there's that. So our timer, we're going to set that to 1. And I'm going to add another line of logic just to make sure that this doesn't get redundant. And that's this. If anchor, do we even have a reference to our anchor? Do we have a reference to our anchor? We don't. Hold on. Let's get into a reference to our anchor. We're going to go to a player attack, and that's going to have our base stuff. So for some reason... Okay, I'm going to make the anchor public since we want to be able to reference. But maybe let's also do protected. I only want this to be able to be referenced through our child script here. And now let's go back into moose charge. And now if anchor dot attack adjustment is not equal to 0, in other words, if we have any distance that we need to go, then we're going to do all of the waiting stuff because it's necessary. But if it's not necessary, we could just trigger the animation. It doesn't matter. Now, let's see if this actually does what we want it to. See, because when it comes to coding, most of the time the computer is just trying to, what do you call it? Drive you insane? Ugh. My Unity likes to mess with me. But if I punch here, ideally this moose just comes charging. And then this move moves over. Yeah. We really don't need to wait for that long, but it did what we wanted it to. So that's important. Yeah, that's perfect. And now the animation looks a lot better, and we can configure how fast it goes to and from its original position. And we can also configure how long it takes for it to wait until the attack happens. So really we can make it look as smooth as we want. And it doesn't matter if it's in the first slot, the second slot, or the third slot. We can use the same base enemy that has this attack distance and use it in a way that makes sense. So, okay. Now that that's taken care of, is there really anything else that we want to do with that scene? I mean, let's hop into... Let's just play it out, right? I'm going to go into the World Zero scene, and we're just going to play the game. So Unity's didn't take a second, and I'm so happy with these fences, although clearly they need to have some stuff fixed up when it comes to the stuff there. Then we have a cutscene. And then we're going to go through the door. Oh, I totally forgot something. I'm at 1 health, so... Oh, gosh. There's a problem. Okay, so now what we have going on is whenever I walk out, it redoes the cutscene. So we're going to have to do a couple of things here. So let's start by hopping into our, what you would call it, cutscene zone. Yes. And we have some simple save scripts that kind of make sure that things don't happen twice. So let's take a look at those and kind of do a refresher. And that will be maybe quality of life when flag is certain values. So we have a flag system. That's what we called it because it's all booleans. So we want a disable script and we want a int flag raiser. All right, so we have the flag raiser and disable scripts when flag is certain value. And we're going to disable the rigid body. So I'm going to take a look down here. We have the rigid body set here. Sorry, the box collider will be disabled. And now I'm a little confused. I guess it's waiting for a player script. That's weird. That's fine. So now we're going to look at the int flag raiser. I'm going to need a flag data core, which we have one. Although I'm going to want to create a new flag data core. And that'll be in the assets, save system. And then I'm going to create a folder called cutscenes. And this will be so that cutscenes don't happen twice. And I'm going to create a scriptable object flag data core. Unless that's right here. And we're going to name this cutscenes accordingly. And this is just a very primitive save system, which we will use JSON to save at some point. But for the sake of testing, all that it does is it keeps track of whether certain things have happened and it reacts accordingly. So we're going to see cutscenes here and cutscenes there. And of course, we're going to need to make sure that this actually changes stuff. When a player enters a trigger, it's going to change. Okay, so no, this is the wrong thing. This is the wrong script. We're going to take a look at the int flag raiser. All it has is some primitive flags here. So I'm going to create a script. And we're going to call it raise flag on zone enter. And this is wildly specific, but as long as I keep it with the save system, it should be fine. We're going to throw this into here, and it's so general that I'm just going to use the first layer. No need to make anything so specific. So now now that we're here, we're going to create a private. And we're going to need a reference to our int flag raiser, which we will get in awake. All right, and the second thing that we're going to need is a script that checks to see if the player has entered a zone. So public void on trigger enter. And collider to be other. And when we enter here, int flag raiser, we're going to want that guy to raise its flag. Okay. And the best part is this script is reusable, so we could apply it in different areas if we need to. Now, this is the kind of a tedious part. We need to allocate space inside of our cutscenes core. And we're going to do manner enter cutscene here. And its value is 0. So we're looking at the 0th flag in the list. So we're going to hop over into the cutscene zone. And we are going to, if the value is 1 at 0, we're going to disable everything. If the int flag raiser is at 0, then it will raise it to 1. And yeah. So now if I try this, ideally we're going to be able to get our game into a certain state here. We want the game to remember that we did this cutscene and not re-trigger it. So if I walk back out, if it re-triggers, we know it's not working. Okay, so there's a huge problem. It didn't do anything. Okay, let's see. It raised the flag to 1. So it technically worked, but it didn't do anything. So on awake, it does all of this stuff. So let's just double check and make sure that the script here isn't doing anything on awake as well, because that could be a problem. So hopping into our switch to game state on enter, it's on trigger enter 2D, which I don't know if that's a problem. Now here's a question. Can we just disable the entire object? I don't know. I feel like that might be a better idea. Let's do that. And we're going to put that in the save system. And hopping into here, we're literally just going to steal everything from this script and rename it slightly and adjust stuff slightly. And that's all we have to do, really. And then we're going to make sure it says set active instead of enable. And set that to false. All right, I think that's everything for that. Let's go ahead and double check inside of Unity, and I'm just going to switch this into a disable game object. Let's just be extreme here, folks. So instead of disable scripts, we're going to get rid of that and do disable game object. And it's basically the same thing. When the ID is 1 in our cutscene flag core, we're going to want to disable the entire parent object this script is a part of. Now let's see if that does it. Now for context, if I pull up our cutscenes here, which it's kicking Unity a second to load, that's fine. Set to 1. Ideally, if I walk up here, it should not trigger the cutscene, but it did. Alright, let's double check this one more time. I feel like this will be the last thing that we fix before we get off, but switch to game state on enter. So that's there. Int flag raiser, cutscene zone. So the ID should actually be 0 and the value should actually be 1. That's on it. Alright, so when we hop in and walk up to the cutscene zone, ideally the cutscene zone should not be active, and therefore the cutscene should not re-trigger because we've already done it. And there we go. But what if I walk right back into it? it does not retrigger. That's exactly what we want. So, of course, if I went into my save system and restarted the scene after deleting this flag, we have a Undertale-like save system which can keep track of various choices or like various actions, and then save them and enable or disable various scripts based on how we make choices. So this raised the flag. Steal this copy and go in. And if I leave, it will no longer retrigger. Cool. And that is all that I wanted to accomplish. Last things last, let's go ahead and start this combat with the enemy here. And just try that out. Punch. Block. Item. Drink. Drink. Escape. Attack. Strike. And with that, we have a pretty well done prototype. So thank you guys for joining us. I think that's it for the stream today. If you're interested in this kind of content, feel free to join us. We're on every single Monday and Wednesday, starting at 4, I want to say, or is it 4:30? You know what? Just be around. And yeah, the Games Afoot should be releasing a new prototype soon. So please join our Discord if you're interested in being one of the playtesters. And yeah, I love having you guys on. It's something to look forward to every week. So I hope you guys have a good day. Enjoy yourselves. God bless. See y'all later.